Good morning, Morai V'Rabotai, Bruchim Abayim. We are continuing on Masechet Succah, and we are holding on Daf Chaf Dalet Amud Bet, the top of the Amud, by the dot. Today's Amud is being learned as a Zchut Refuah Shelema for Esther Bracha Bat Chaya, for Rachel Simcha Bat Nahid, Nisim Ben Miriam, that you all have Refuah Shelema Betoch Sha'ar Cholei Yisrael. Amen. Amen. Today's Amud is also being learned as a Zchut for the Neshama, for Aliyat Neshama of Nosrat Bat Yaakov. Her Neshama should have an Aliyah. This month's learning of the community has been graciously dedicated by the Shea family, Kohen family, Dayan families. It should be an ultimate Zchut for all of their mishpachot, Be'ezrat Hashem. Amen. And of course, our tefillot go out to those who have been affected by the fires, the recent fires, and we daven and we learn in their zchut that they should be all safe. Emir Hashem. And on sketch from the wildfires ongoing, the fire of Torah should be really a protection against these catastrophe that has surrounded our city. Should be Be'ezrat Hashem zchut for all of them to be safe and sound. Amen. Amen. Okay, we basically finished a discussion on Machloket Rabbi Meir and Rabbi Yehuda over the Mishnah that said you perhaps cannot use livestock for the wall of your sukkah. You can't bring your local cow or donkey and just tie them down and use them as one of the walls of the sukkah. Rabbi Meir said, Rabbi Yehuda said, it's fine. We went through a discussion what exactly the reasoning behind Rabbi Meir is. We initially thought perhaps the reason is because the livestock is going to run away, or maybe it's going to drop dead. Chayish lemita, lo chayish lemita. Are we concerned for sudden death or not? And the Gemara at the end took a 180 reversal, and the Gemara said the reason indeed is in Rabbi Meir, not necessarily for sudden death or running away, but rather a mechitza that is not built by a human being. It's not considered mechitza, or a mechitza ha'omedet beruach. If it's inflated, standing with air, is not considered necessarily a mechitza. But we had another very interesting halakha mentioned at the very end of our Mishnah, in the Shita of Rabbi Yossi HaGalili, that a person cannot use livestock for giving a get to his wife. You can't be creative and bring an artist to write a get on your beautiful cow and give the cow as a birthday gift to your wife. As a get, you cannot do that. Why not? Why not? Why? We don't use necessarily any specific thing nowadays for a get. So why can't you? If it's written there, it's not going anywhere. It's a pretty creative way of doing it. So says the Mishnah, you can't do it in the name of Rabbi Yossi HaGalili. We're going to discuss the reason thereof. Says our Gemara, Amar Mor Mishum Rabbi Yossi HaGalili Amru. They said in the name of Rabbi Yossi HaGalili, Af en kotvin alav gite nashim. You cannot write a get for a wife on an animal, a live walking animal, a livestock. My Tamad Rabbi Yossi HaGalili asks the Gemara, what's the reason? The Tanya, we learned in the Braita, Sefer. Now, this is one of the few words that the entire Masechet Gitin is predicated and built on top of this one pasuk, Ki kach ish isha u'ba'ala v'ayayim lo timtzachen be'enav ki matz'a ba'ervat davar. If things go south in a marriage, says the pasuk, ve'katav la sefer kritut ve'natan be'yadah ve'shilecha mi beto. And he shall write a sefer keritut, a book that cuts off and detaches the relation, severs the relationship of the husband and wife, v'natan beyadah, and gives it to her hand, ve'shilecha mi beto, and sends her off from his house. This is one of the major psukim that the entire Masechet Gitin, revolving around divorce, is built upon. So the Braita says, when the pasuk says sefer, why do you have to say a book? Ve'katav la sefer keritut, and that you're writing a book of divorce, right? You're writing a book of divorce, says the Gemara. En li ela sefer. I only would know that it has to be a sefer. What's a sefer? A sefer is written on a klaf. You have to have a kosher parchment, like a sefer Torah. So says the Gemara, En li ela sefer. If it would say just sefer keritut, I would say it has to be written on a klaf. Minayin l'rabot kol davar. How do I know that you could write it on anything? You could take a piece of wood and engrave and write. Well, I take it back. Not engraving is not so simple. Write on a piece of wood, or a piece of stone, or on a lezayit, says the Gemara, on a fancy leaf. How do I know that that would be kasher also? Talmud Lomar, sefer. The Torah says, v'katavla, rather. Katavla mikol makom. When the Torah says you have to write for her, you didn't have to say write. You could just said, v'natan sefer keritut biyada. Why do you have to? If you tell me sefer, I will know that it's written like sefer Torah, right? If the Torah would not say, and he shall write for her, the Torah would just say, hand to her a sefer keritut. What would I think? Say, well, I learned all the halachot of this sefer from sefer Torah, right? It has to be, of course, written. I would say it has to be written with the dayo, on a klaf, all the halachot. So why do you have to go out of your way and say v'katavla, that you shall write for her? It's coming to tell you, when it's extra, it teaches you v'katavla mikol makom. You could write however writing is. It doesn't have to be sefer. It could be on a piece of stone. It could be on a piece of wood. It could be on a leaf. So obviously, the obvious question follows, so why do you tell me sefer then? If it doesn't have to be a sefer, so don't write sefer. Just write katavla keritut v'natan beyada. Why sefer? Imken, asks the Gemara, ma Talmud lomar sefer? Why do you need to say sefer? Lomar lecha is coming to teach you ma sefer davar shem bo ruach chaim ve'eno ochel. We come to say sefer to teach you what types of things are kasher. It has to be something that shares the same criteria and properties as sefer. What's sefer? It used to be an animal, now it's dead. Can't be alive. And also, it's not an ochel. It can't be on food. You can't take an apple and write on it a get. Right? Can't do that. It has to be something that's not alive, and it's not food. So says Rabbi Yossi HaGalili, that's where I know that you can't write it on a cow and give it to your wife, because cow is alive, livestock. So therefore you can't do it because it's not comparable to sefer. Av kol davar she'en bo ruach chaim ve'eino ochel. Fine, says the Gemara, that's Rabbi Yossi HaGalili. Rabbanan disagree with that. Rabbanan, iketiv besefer. Rabbanan says sefer is not coming to teach you that. If it would say besefer, v'katavla besefer keritut, I would say, yeah, it's coming to tell you it has to be like a sefer Torah on a klaf with a dio. But it doesn't say that. It says v'katavla sefer. You know what sefer means? No, we translate sefer as a book. But if you are referring to a book, it has to say grammatically, it would be correct to say v'katavla besefer keritut, right? Or al ha-sefer. Why do you say katavla sefer? It's not a book. Why is a book called sefer? Because it's sipur devarim. You're telling a story. You're saying something. So therefore, when the Torah says v'katavla sefer keritut, and it doesn't say besefer in a book or ala sefer on a book, it's not saying book. It's saying it has to be a story. You're saying Sipur Devarim. V'Rabbanan iktiv besefer kedeka'amrat. If it would say besefer, you would be right. Hashta dichtiv sefer. Now that it just says sefer, quote unquote, lesfirat devarim be'alma hudati, is coming to just tell you that it should say the story of how you are sending her off. It has to say the way the get is nowadays, which is, saying how this person came at this and this date and this place, and he said that he doesn't want to be married, and he's sending off. It's a story, a short one, but a sipur devarim. Says the Gemara, v'Rabbanan hai v'katav lah mai darshi be. Now, pay attention for about 2 seconds. You have the reason that we needed v'katav lah in Rabbi Yossi HaGalili was because we learned Sefer means a book, right? So once it says Sefer, I would say only klaf. It has to be mamash like a parchment, like a Sefer Torah. And therefore I need the verbiage v'katav lah to tell me, you could write on a stone, you could write on a wood, you could write on a leaf. But according to Chachamim, that Sefer just means saying a story, doesn't mean a klaf. So I don't need v'katav lah. I already would know you could write on anything. Why do you need v'katav lah? So according to Chachamim, v'Rabbanan hai v'katav mai darshibe. How do you darshin the word v'katav? Says the Gemara, ha'hu mibayle b'ktiva mitkareshet ve'ena mitkareshet bekesef. That we use to learn that you could only divorce a wife with a written document, not with money. Why would you think that you could divorce with money, by the way? Well, yeah, money solves everything, Holmes, but it's not that. It's because of a very technical limud that we have across the entire Shas. We learn that the divorce and marriage are compared to one another in a very serious halachic way, from a pasuk, with a hekesh, because in the beginning of Perek Chafdalit of Dvarim, right, Deuteronomy 24:2, I think it is, right, it says, V'yatz'a mibeto, when it talks about divorce, V'halcha v'hayita le'ish acher. She gets out of this marriage and she enters another one. She marries somebody else, right? V'yatz'a v'hayita, right? It's makish havaya le'yetzia. It compares and equates marriage and divorce. And we learn a ton of halachot from this. So I would have thought that just like marriage, we learn it's done by giving her money, something of value. That's why you give a ring nowadays. Previously, in the Sephardic communities, even until recently in some communities, they still would give a coin, right? The coin, not a ring. They would give a coin. Instead of saying, Arad mekudeshet li betabat zu, it would say bekesef zu, or bematbea zu. Right? You're giving her something of value, monetary value. How do you learn that, by the way? We learn it from kicha from Sedei Ephron. Because by marriage, the most fundamental pasuk is ki kach ish isha. When a man gets a wife, right? Acquires a wife. And how do we know what yikach is? What does it mean, yikach? You grab her, pick her up, do hagbah. Well, what do you do? So what's exactly, usually when you have an item, you take it to your domain, you do hagbah, wife, you're not then doing that. So what's kicha? So we learn from Sedei Ephron that when Ephron sold his Me'arat HaMachpelah with the entire field around it to Avraham Avinu gave cash, right? 400 shekel over lasocher to Ephron and Vaikach. So we learned that kicha misedei Ephron, that the marriage also could be done by a transactional item of value, giving money when a kiddushin happens. That's one of the 3 ways the Mishnah says the marriage is accomplished. So says the Gemara, that's why if I would put this kicha misadeh together with the hekesh of Havaya leYetziah veYatzah mibeto ve'alcha v'ayta leish acher, that the pasuk puts together marriage and divorce in a halachic way, comparing them together, I would say, you pay her, you pay the money back or whatever it is, and you say, go. Right. By the way, Rambam writes, before Matan Torah, how would be marriage and divorce? We had still the concept of marriage and divorce before Matan Torah, right? We had concepts of immorality within a context of marriage before Matan Torah. So says the Rambam, you know how it was? It was based on this. You go to the marketplace, you see someone, you like her, you say, well, would you want to marry me? She says, yes. You move into a house together, that's marriage. You get sick and tired of the marriage, you say, go, you go out, and that would be divorce. So Rambam writes, right, before the Torah. So I could fathom a concept that I made this marriage even post Matan Torah with acquirement of kesef. It could be a reversal by kesef also. That would be the hava. Therefore, Rabbanan say you need to say the katavla. It doesn't work. It has to be through a written document. It has to be through a written document. You can't just undo a wedding by paying some money and sending her off to her life. It has to be severed with a written document. Says the Gemara, I would have thought that because the marriage and divorce in the same pasuk has been hekeshed, has been compared together in a halachic way, Mahavaya bekesef, just like marriage works with money, af yetziah bekesef, divorce should also work with money. Kamash malan, therefore Chachamim say, the pasuk had to say v'katavla to tell us that it doesn't work with money, you need a written document. Now, back to Rabbi Yossi. Rabbi Yossi HaGalili ay svara minale. How do you know in Rabbi Yossi HaGalili that you can't just pay her off and divorce her, that you need a written document? Says because you don't have the katavla, right? The katavla, remember, the katavla, according to Rabbi Yossi HaGalili, is coming to just tell you that you could write on anything. Sefer, right, is for a Sefer Torah, and you would think that it has to be like a Sefer. So the katavla is coming to say, no, it doesn't have to be on, it could be on anything. So how do you know money doesn't work? You don't have an extra word for that. Gemara says, no, you don't need an extra word based on Rabbi Yossi. Mi Sefer Keritut Nafkale. He learns it from Sefer Keritut. Sefer Koretet, that a Sefer, a written document, a book is a written document, right? Remember, according to Rabbi Yossi HaGalili, if we only had Sefer, I would think it has to be a serious Sefer Torah type of thing, on a cloth, with a dio, right? The Katavla just makes it more watered down than it could be written on anything, but it has to be written, and that I learned from Sefer, right? Remember, Chachamim say Sefer means just saying a story, Sipur Devarim. Rabbi Yossi says, no, Sefer means a written document. So I know written document, according to Rabbi Yossi, from the word Sefer. I don't need the Katav, right? Ve'en davar acher koretet. Only a written document could cut off and sever the relationship of marriage. Ve'idach and Chachamim would say that Sefer Keritut is coming for something else. Ha'umi baile ledavar hakoret beno lebenah. Chachamim say, you know why the pasuk says Sefer Keritut? A Sefer that's karet, that koret means it cuts off. You know what that means? That's coming to say a very specific halacha, which we paskin like this, Rabotai. So listen well. It means, like the Braita that we learned. A man comes to his wife and says, you see, this is your get. You want a divorce? Here's a divorce. But on condition. We already learned that conditions could be made in a divorce. But how about the following condition? He says, this is your get on condition that you will never, ever drink wine ever again. Right? I'm sick and tired of your habits of drinking. This is a get, but almenat on condition that you'll never drink ever again. Or, V'al menat shelo telchi lebet avich leolam. Or on condition that you'll never step foot into your father's house again. Right? Or for that matter, that doesn't have to be as sensitive as this. Could be anywhere. Right? As long as you don't do X, Y, and Z ever again. Right? Enze keritut. Says the Braita, she's not divorced. Not divorced. Why? Because this is not cutting off. You are hinging the get on something forever. You haven't severed the relationship. Well, because what? Because now you give her a get, and she's divorced, fine. She's very careful not to drink a cup of wine for the next 10 years. 10 years from now, she's married with 5 other children, and she feels like drinking a cup of wine. She drinks it, and what happens? Turns out, in retrospect, she was never divorced. And all of her kids are mamzerim, right? So something that hangs over her head forever is not keritut. You didn't cut it. Say Chachamim, say Rabbanan, when it says Sefer Keritut, means give her something that cuts it off, severs it completely. And that's the definition of a get, says Chachamim. That's why you need Sefer Keritut, a book that cuts off, a written document that finishes it. You can't hang over her head something forever. But if you say, Kol Shloshim Yom, if you say, this is your get on condition that you don't drink for the next 30 days. That's fine. You don't enter your father's house for the next 30 days. That's fine. Because after 30 days passes, it's cut off. It's finished. It's not hovering over her head anymore. And that is, even though that's conditional and doesn't happen right away, but it has a time limit. It's not forever, therefore it's good. So says the Gemara. Ve'idach, and Rabbi Yossi HaGalili would say, how does he know it? How does Rabbi Yossi HaGalili know that I can't say, well, this is your get on condition that you never ever drink again? How does he know? He learns it from Sefer. He can't do it because he needs Sefer Keritut, right? To say that it has to be a book, right? So he doesn't have it available. Rabbi Yossi says, no. I have, because he could have said Sefer Karet. Keritut is like a double language. And from that additional Keritut, instead of Karet, I learned that it has to be mamash severing the relationship. It can't be hovering over her head. That's what I learned. And Chachamim saying, what? The karet, keritut is, potato, it's the same thing. You can't learn from that. So this basically explains the entire parasha of how they understand the mindset of Rabbi Yossi HaGalili, how he learns this pasuk completely with all the questions of why he doesn't learn like Chachamim, and also the entire mindset of Chachamim and why they don't learn like Rabbi Yossi HaGalili. Fine, so now we know at least why you cannot write a get on livestock, right? We got into a crash course on Masechet Gitin because of this question. It was kedai to have a half a amud to go through some basic laws of Hilchot Gitin. Because of this halakha that you cannot write, not just sukkah can be used as a wall with livestock, but also you cannot write Gitin Hashim. Next Mishnah is further in the laws of the walls of sukkah. Haoseh sukkato ben ha'ilanot veha'ilanot defanot lah keshera. We spoke in the previous daf that if you have a sukkah built on a tree house sukkah, a tree sukkah, is pasul. Unless, of course, you have 3 walls that would stand. Even if I would take away the tree, still the sukkah would stand, and only the 4th wall is relying on the tree, which is not even necessary. That's what we said. And the reason for it is because you can't mishtamishin be'ilan. You can't use an ilan on Shabbat or on Yom Tov. So therefore, a sukkah that you build on top of a tree is kasher for Chol HaMoed, but en olin lah beyom tov, you can't go on it. You can't use that sukkah on Shabbat or on Yom Tov. That was the halacha. Now the Mishnah says here that a sukkah that the wall is a tree or a bunch of trees is kasher. It's kasher on Yom Tov. it's kasher. On Shabbat Chol HaMoed, it's fine. Now, we have to understand why. Says the Gemara, Amar Rav Acha Bar Yaakov. This is a fundamental one. We're going to be dealing with this Rav Acha Bar Yaakov for the next few lines. Rav Acha Bar Yaakov says, Kol mechitza she'ena yechola la'amod beruach metzuya ena mechitza. A wall that cannot withstand the normal wind, day-to-day life, it's not considered a kosher mechitza. Now, last time when we had this, in Machloket Rabbi Akiva and Rabbi Gamliel, we were talking about a wind that blew off the whole sukkah, a mechitza that would fall from a wind, right? Here Rashi says, if you take a look, we're not talking about a mechitza that falls with a wind, but we're talking about a mechitza that moves around with a wind. And that is also pasul. Look at your Rashi, the first Rashi in the Gemara, she'ena yechola la'amod beruach metzuya, she'haruach molicha u'mevi'ah. It moves a little bit with the wind, right?
Like a tarp.
That's machloket. It's machloket. That's why Obadia was very stringent on the tarp walls of the regular canvas sukkahs. He was very unhappy about it. Also, there's machloket if this is 3 tfachim subtotal, which is also not a lot. It's still this much. Obadia was machmir on 1 tefach, right, from each side. So that's already much more stringent. It will render many of the sukkahs that you see around town invalid and completely pasul. That comes from here. The Mishnah says, if you have walls, it's fine. Rav Acha Bar Yaakov says, but that's provided that the mechitza, the wall, does not go and come with the wind. So says the Gemara on that. Tanan, we learned in the Mishnah, how says Sukkato ben ilanot ve'ilanot defanot. Our Mishnah, that if you're using the branches and the trunks of the tree for your wall, it's kasher. Says the Gemara, wait a second. But branches move. Gemara says, no, you're talking about solid trunks of the tree that they're not moving anywhere, they're not going anywhere. Gemara says, wait, says the Gemara, we have no feet. You have the branches that come from the sides of these bushes or trees. It's not just the trunks, but those branches are loose. So those could be moving. Gemara says, no. The avid la behusa vedafna. You secured them. We're talking about the case that you secured them with small palm leaves. Like you tied them together, or you took this lulabim and you stuck them in, and you made it sturdy. Now a regular wind does not move anything. Regular wind, right? Says the Gemara, Yachi Ma'ilem. So if that's the case, that you bolted down everything and you have a solid tank-proof wall, so then Ma'ilem, what's the chidush? Why are you even saying this? Of course it's going to be kasher. Why would I not think that's kasher? We know that we have no requirements for walls. The wall could be made out of cement, out of wood, out of whatever, stone. Anything is kasher for the wall. So why, if it's such a sturdy, nice wall that doesn't move with anything, what's the chidush of the Mishnah? This is a full Mishnah in the Masechet Succah. It's coming to teach me something. What's the chidush? Says the Gemara, you know what the chidush is? I would have maybe thought, Nigzor dilmati leishtamush beilan. We just had a Mishnah discussing how if the tree is holding your sukkah up, it's asur to use it on Shabbat and Yom Tov, because that's considered using a tree. And I would have thought, you know what happens if you have a tree as a wall of your sukkah? You're going to come in and you take your hat off. Where are you going to put it? Hang it on a branch. Yeah. That would be asur on Shabbat, right? That would be asur on Yom Tov. You mishtamesh be'ilan, right? You take your tie off. Where are you going to put it? On a tree, right? That's the natural. I would have thought maybe you should answer this, not allow it, because you got to put your kelim on the branches, you put your stuff on the tree. Kamash Malan is coming to teach you we're not concerned about that. As long as in the previous Mishnah, the whole sukkah was held up by a tree. That's using the ilan. That's not mutter. But here that you don't, for your kashrut of sukkah, for your sukkah standing, you don't have to use the branches. We're not concerned that you're going to hang your hat on one of them, and it's kasher. Kamash malan. Tashma. Come on, listen. This is attacking the line of logic of Rabbi Acha bar Yaakov, right? In other words, Rabbi Acha bar Yaakov said that any mechitza that moves a little bit with the wind is pasul, right? And al-mal ledaber. It's nothing to talk about. Pasul. Now the Gemara is going to challenge that. Hayasham ilano geder o mechitzat kanim nidon mishom diomet. We have spoken about this 3 times so far of Hilchot Eruvin, that on Shabbat, especially when the pilgrimage was happening for the Oler Galim to come from all over Eretz Yisrael to Yerushalayim, and they would be coming with livestock and themselves and kids and whatnot, they need water. And you have wells, but the problem is the wells are in the middle of nowhere. So you have Rashut HaRabim around it, or you have Carmelit around it. However you slice it, the well itself is Rashut HaYachid. So even if outside of it is not full Rashut HaRabim, but it's Carmelit, still I can't draw water outside. And we mentioned that Chazal had this massive kula, leniency, that you could have like an imaginary square around this well being the center of the square, and just on the edges you have a double mechitza, a L-shaped 90 degrees, right? Each one of them is 1 amma, just this much, not more. And you have that on 4 corners, and it's good. It's as if the inside is Shudayachid. You could go inside there, pour water, take water out, and so on. What can you use as that diomed? We call that diomed. The L-shaped thing is diomed, diomdin, right? What is kasher to be used as diomed? Do you have to go get from Home Depot 4x8 to put it there? No, not necessarily. Says the Mishnah, you could also use an ilan. A tree could be used as a wall. Right? O mechitzat kanim also is nidon mishom diomed, right? Reeds also are good. Mechitzat kanim. That's why. So Gemara is assuming here they have branches, you have this kanim, and they're loose, they move, right? And still is kasher. The Mishnah says you could use it as a wall of diomed. Says the Gemara, no. Hatam nami mishum the avid la behusa v'dafna. There also you have secured it together with other branches of palm in a solid way that the wind, the regular wind, does not move it at all. That's what we talk about. Otherwise, it's not considered a mechitza. Tashma. Oh, we're out of time right now. The next tashma is also related, of course, to this. We will bezrat